Good morning, good morning. How we doing? Okay, all right. A couple of you had your coffee. I think we could do a little better than that. Would you guys stand with me real quick? And I said, good morning, how we doing? All right, well, we're going to sing today, if that's all right with you. Let's get into it today.
In the depth of every fear, there were diamonds, diamonds, waiting to break out of here. Don't you think I hear the whispers, those subtle lies, those angry pleas? They're just demons, demons, wishing they were free like me. With a fire from the sun, with a light when the day is done. We are the brave, the chosen ones. With the diamonds, diamonds, rising above the dust. Oh, 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 all your curses will surrender. Every damning word will kneel. There's just mountains, mountains, about to turn into fields. With the fire from the sun, with the light when the day is done. We are the brave, the chosen ones. With the diamonds, diamonds, rising above the dust. Oh, 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 rising, 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 rising. But you'll know my name when you see it. And in these ashes, I'm stronger still. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You've taken down so many others. Oh, but you'll know my name when you see it. And in these ashes, I'm stronger still. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You've taken down so many others, oh, but you'll know my name when you see it. And in these eyes, learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. You'll learn to fear my pain, yeah, you will. Yeah, you will, you will, yeah. With a fire from the sun, with a light when the day is done. We are the brave, the chosen ones, yeah. With the diamonds, diamonds, with the diamonds, diamonds, yeah. With the diamonds, diamonds, yeah. With the diamonds, diamonds, rising above the dust. Oh, 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 rising above the dust. Oh. Amen. How we doing? Okay.
Sounds like you don't need coffee. You need at least one song. I think that might be the trick. Man, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you guys this morning, to sing songs with you this morning. I think Matt said this best earlier. He was talking about how wonderful it is when we show up and we sing and we present and we provide something that shifts this space. Like, people feel something in this space. And so this morning I want to invite every single one of you, if you're willing, if you're able, we're going to sing another song, but I would love for every single one of you to just lift up your voice from the front to the back. Let's sing together this morning. Whoa, 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 Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above, and praise thou mountain, fix upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Oh, oh.
Hither by thy help I come, and I hope for thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God, here to rescue me from danger, interpose his precious love. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I am constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it. Seal it for thy courts above.
So we're going to sing that one more time, from the front to the back, regardless of who's around you, who you might have come in with. If this is something that's on your heart, you feel like singing it, maybe it's not even for you, maybe it's for someone else, someone around you. Let's sing this together this morning. Come on, lift up your voice. And oh, to grace, how
great a debtor, daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. And here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above.
Matt, and I'm the lead pastor here at Watershed. Welcome. Is this weather killer? Yeah. Like I got to wear my long sleeve shirt this morning. This is my son's. I stole it out of his closet. Don't tell him, he has no idea. I'm just going to put it back when I get home. He'll never know. It'll just smell a little bit like me. That's too much information. All right. Good morning. I'm so excited that you're here. Couple of things. There's some things coming down the pike here for our students that I want to make you aware of. There's a student mystery retreat November 3rd and 4th. And so if you have a student age or from grade 6 through 12, you want to go ahead and secure your spot. I think they're starting to land, like not just where it's going to be, but what it's going to be. It's a mystery still. So I mentioned this last Sunday, I think if you like reach out to Blair, the parents will know what's going on. That's appropriate, right? They're not just going to cart them off and not tell you anything. But the students are left in suspense, and that's part of what we're trying to create here, what Blair's trying to create with her team as our family ministries pastor, and Madeline Comer, who is also on staff as our junior and senior high pastor these days. Also, there's a fireside Fright Night that's taking place October 27th from 6:30 to 8:30. Another student event. I think there's going to be tons of food, games, and costumes are encouraged. Also, coming up, I think it's next weekend, there's something called Claudia's 5K, Call Out for Courage. Yes. Who did that? You. Dominique. Give it up for Dominique this morning. Yeah. Claudia was this instrumental force, from what I understand. I never had the chance to meet her, but this instrumental force as a part of ICU Talks, who in May of 2019 lost her battle or lost her life to bipolar disorder. Claudia was a woman of courage and just had this amazing way to deeply love those who were in her life and those who were around her. And this 5K not only honors her courage, honors her life, but it's also a way to raise support and to raise awareness in the effort to bring change, bring an end to the mental health stigma. And so we're really excited that we get to partner with ICU Talks. If you want to run in this race or just come and cheerlead or whatever you want to do there, but I think they would love to have you run. You can sign up through this QR code, and I believe that is next Saturday. Is that correct, Dominique? Yeah, next Saturday. All right. And then finally, it's hard for me not to rabbit trail and talk about just all the relational, communal things that are happening right now, just the way people are connecting and the uptick in things like book clubs and preface and all these different environments. But we're kind of in this stage at Watershed, and we do this every late September through October, where as a leadership, we start to look at our resources and our finances and start thinking about 2024 and budgets and things of that nature. And if you've been around for a while, you've kind of been on the journey with us as we've moved from where we were 12, 18 months ago and where we are now. And I got to looking at some of these things this past week, and I just got really encouraged. Now, I'm just going to take 3 or 4 minutes and let everybody know kind of what I discovered. And so this time last year, as we were coming out of summer, our monthly average giving was $29,950. The only way we were surviving at that time, and again, you're probably familiar with this narrative, but we had classrooms that we were renting down this hallway, and they were subsidizing, that income was subsidizing our resources as we were coming out of the pandemic. And so it was literally saving us financially. And so over the past, 8 or 9 months, there's been a campaign that we've engaged in called Nevertheless. In fact, on the back of the seats, the card or the QR code that you're looking at on the back of the seat in front of you, which is a tongue twister, if you scan that QR card, it kind of takes you to the campaign. Well, I got to looking at last summer versus this summer, and the difference was just dramatic. So last year, $27,950. This summer, $46,250 per month. That's a $18,000 difference, y'all. $18,000. The ways that is encouraging, I don't even have enough words. So those of you who have jumped on board over the last 12 months, you did this. Those of you more recently who have said yes to recurring giving, this is all recurring dollars too. This doesn't factor in some of the one-time gifts, year-end gifts that we always end up talking about. We'll talk about more. We'll talk more about that in the weeks and the month ahead. But I wanted to point to this because when someone says, "How's it going at Watershed?" my answer is momentum. And it hasn't been like one dramatic thing. It has been incremental things that start to compound, and then the critical mass, in theory, or hopefully, starts to really take off. And this is one of those moments where you look back and go, oh my gosh, this is absolutely staggering. So I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to encourage you on that front. And then I want to prompt you to begin thinking about what this looks like for you moving forward. For some of you, you've been kind of hanging out going, hey, what's it look like to be involved here financially? Because we're not done. Like, while we are so much better, I've been looking at early numbers, like what's it going to take for us in terms of a budget for next year, and we're going to need probably close to about $56,000 per month, which is where we used to be and beyond before the pandemic. And so we're making these incremental shifts. Momentum is picking up, but we're still not finished. And so if you're doing something recurring over the next few weeks, you don't have to do it today, but over the next few weeks, would you start to think about or reflect or contemplate or pray, all right, is there a way for me to dial that up just a little bit more? And for some of you, you've just kind of been wondering, well, what's that look like? We would invite you to jump in that as well. The needle is moving. The needle continues to move, but we still have a lot of work left to do. And it's important work. We have 4 tenants that are still providing us resources right now. 2 of those are going to go away at the end of November. So, all right, this is an opportunity. If there's ever an opportunity to step into it, now would be that time. But we're going to talk more about that in the weeks ahead. Today is all about celebrating what's happened. There's so much momentum. Thank you. If you're interested in being a part of generosity here at Watershed, or you want to adjust or add to what you're currently doing, there's an easy way to do that by following the QR code. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, Matt at watershed.charlotte.com, or info@watershed.charlotte.com. I'd love to talk with you more about that. And gang, just thank you. This is incredible. Okay, on that note of celebration, stand up for just a moment if you don't mind. And this is the part of the morning where you have a chance to say hello to somebody that maybe you've never said hello to. So you can shake hands or bump elbows. enjoy connecting with each other for just a moment. Reb and
Someone falls to pieces, sleeping all alone. Someone kills the pain, spinning in the silence. She slowly drifts away. Someone gets excited in the chapel yard and catches a bouquet. Another lays a dozen white roses on the grave. And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do. And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can
Someone finds salvation in everyone, another only pain. Someone tries to hide themselves, and inside himself he prays. Someone says it's true love until the end of time. Another runs away, separate or united, healthy or insane. To be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
Even when you've paid enough, been pulled apart or been held up, with every single memory of the good and bad faces of love. Don't you sleep tonight, I'm sure everything will end up alright. You may win or lose, but to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
But to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
But to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can
Yeah. And to be yourself is all that you can do. And to be yourself is all that you can do.
All that you can do.
So I hadn't watched that yet. It was longer than I anticipated, so I came up a little early, hid in the dark for a bit, which I guess fits with the theme, kind of spooky, scary, like a werewolf bar mitzvah. Thank you for those of you who understood that reference. My name's David. Hi, I'm one of the pastors here, the pastor of, what is my actual title? Formation and Mission. Very prestigious. But yeah, this is week 2 of our series Shadow Work about monster theory, which is a real thing, a real stuffy academic thing that I will explain a little bit more in a moment. But before I do that, apparently I've been talking about this in announcements for a few weeks. I didn't even realize. I genuinely do not know what I'm going to say when I come up here. And so oftentimes I don't remember what I did say. And so I had forgotten that I had hyped up this talk a little bit. And the reason I had done that is because, is this true? I actually made a reference sorry, my mind works weird. I get to talk about Godzilla this morning, is what I'm trying to get to. Yeah, okay, all right, I did hype it up. Excellent. And, because obviously Godzilla's a monster, right? And I'm gonna make it work so that me talking about Godzilla ties into deeply, deeply meaningful spiritual matters. But before I do that, I know that probably 2/3 of you are also massive Godzilla fans, and so just give some patience here, because we're gonna do a little bit of remedial work for the other third of the room, who's maybe less familiar with the big G. Andy, go ahead and throw up that first slide. So this is, of course, my best friend, Godzilla. And this shot is quite iconically, this is from the original Gojira. So Gojira, it's a Japanese sort of mythical creature, kind of like a ape whale, is kind of how it translates. And that's what Godzilla is called in Japan. Like we do with many things, we Americanized it. Came up with a different word that became more iconic. Thank you, Americans. Anyway, so no. Stick with the first one. We're not ready yet. Stick with the first one. So this original Godzilla came out in 1954, and it was, and this is where we're going to get to start to tie into some of the monster theory stuff that I'll sort of unpack here in a second here. But the original Godzilla. This is not long after the end of World War II, not long after the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Godzilla was a metaphor, was an avatar, was a mirror of sorts. It was a tool that the people of Japan were able to use, to process, to face, to deal with the trauma, not just of the war itself, but of what ended the war, which was these horrific bombings. And so right at the very beginning, right from the start, Godzilla was more than a force of nature, more than merely like a scary monster. Godzilla was a kind of lens, a kind of tool that allowed, embedded with meaning that allowed folks to process things. And in this sense, Godzilla was a villain, but not cleanly a villain kind of like the twirling mustache sense, because Godzilla was full of baggage, was full of these traumas and these pains and these wrestlings that the people were processing. All right, now we can go to the next one. Very famously, at least for the first half century of Godzilla, it was a dude in a rubber suit. And I'm still quite nostalgic for that version of my friend, even though CGI has advanced enough that we can sort of discard the suits. But so in the second picture, this was like the 60s and 70s Godzilla, the Showa era. Yes, named after the emperor at the time, of course. I know most of you knew that. But this Godzilla, so you'll notice the suit is a little less bulky, and that's because in this era, Godzilla turned into more of a hero, more of a freedom fighter over the years. Godzilla began to battle other existential threats. The Godzilla series was pretty early on the threat of climate change, and so a lot of the 60s and 70s Godzilla movies were Godzilla battling against other monsters that were sort of metaphors or lenses for other sort of existential threats, population expansion and pollution and climate change and things like that. And then after beating his arch nemesis, or one of his two arch nemesis, Mechagodzilla, for the second time, Godzilla went dormant for about a decade and then returned in the late 80s. And they just pretended that everything except for the first movie never happened. Just a total bonkers move. But Godzilla was then back again as this force of nature, and there was like these Cold War themes that were being processed and things like that. But they bulked Godzilla back up, and they had better like suit technology, which totally makes sense. And but Godzilla became more of this moral gray area during the late 80s and into the 90s. At times was a villain, at times was more heroic. But even when Godzilla was more heroic, he was not something that they could control. He was almost circumstantially heroic. He was almost kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, so he was maybe defending the earth at times or defending nature, but wasn't like necessarily on the side of humanity. And then final set. I mean, I've skipped over a ton of iterations of Godzilla, much to, I know, all of your disappointment, but I just wanted to get the highlights. And then in the 2000s, we got a bunch of mostly standalone Godzilla films, and in these ones, almost each instance was Godzilla representing something different. The one on the left is this Godzilla is almost actually a ghost of the original Godzilla and is coming to like exact revenge on folks. And then this gnarly looking one on the right from the 2016 Shin Godzilla was meant to sort of help and help the people of Japan process the immediate aftermath of, if y'all remember back in the mid-2000s, there was a tsunami that hit Japan and caused all these reactors to melt down and fail, and it ended up being this massive like ecological disaster. It was this total nightmare. And so this movie, Shin Godzilla, Godzilla's sort of like representative of that, and really the movie is about like the limitations of the Japanese government's ability to respond to these threats, and it's powerful stuff. So anyway, you're up to speed now. Congrats, the few of you who probably didn't know all of that already. I've loved Godzilla since I was 5 or 6, and I think even before I had language to articulate why and kind of be able to do a TED Talk like I just did about Godzilla, there was something about the the massiveness of Godzilla. I don't mean that physically, like just size-wise. The grandeur. It was everything Godzilla represented took me outside of myself. It made me feel small in all the best ways. There was an awe-inspiring nature to it, but then I was also struck by the inability to cleanly map Godzilla into these binary good, bad, right, wrong, hero, villain categories that I think we're all drawn to. We talk about this at Watershed a lot. We love our binaries here. Let me rephrase that. We as humans love our binaries. Half of our job at Watershed is to break all of our binaries and make us all deeply, deeply uncomfortable by sort of muddying the waters of how things fit cleanly. So we actually, here at Watershed, love undermining the binaries that we cling so oftentimes obsessively to. And Godzilla is a beautiful image of that. So that sort of setup, let's talk really quickly about monster theory. What is monster theory, other than, of course, the basis for this series? So monster theory is a literary theory. It's a textual theory. It probably is most applicable when we're thinking about like actual texts, like books. You know, some of the most famous monsters throughout history come from literature, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the like. But then stretch ourselves a little bit. Don't limit our notion of text to just written texts. There are other kinds of texts. This is a text, a context. And there are narratives, and there are symbols, and there are histories and expectations that all of you are bringing into this space, oftentimes unconsciously without even realizing it. And monster theory is a tool, a sort of interpretive lens that allows us to examine any text, book, film, television, video game, and then, of course, context. Our lived experiences can be looked at through this lens, and we can consider the ways in which monsters serve as something more than themselves, something instructive, something disruptive, something apocalyptic even. In fact, the word monster, the etymology of it, which is a fun word which just means where we get the word from, comes from monstrum, which could be translated or understood as to warn or to reveal, to unmask. And so even the word that we use, monsters in English, it means to shine a light on something, to point something out that maybe we didn't see coming, that's going to interrupt us, that's going to change the way that we see or experience the world. And so monsters are apocalyptic, not in the world is ending sense, but in the more literal notion of the term in the Greek, which is to unmask or to unveil. Monsters, they bring to an end a certain way of being in the world for us and inaugurate or bring into existence a new way of being into the world. And so within this thing that we call monster theory, this guy Jeffrey Cohen, who's done a lot of work on it, he has 7 theses. I think Kim mentioned a few of them last week. You'll hear bits and pieces of them over the course of this series, but I wanted to highlight 2, 1 and 7. 1 and 7. So thesis 1, the monster's body is a cultural body. What does that mean? It means literally what I've described Godzilla as being. Godzilla is not just an animal within the context of the Godzilla narratives. Godzilla is representative of something cultural, something societal. Godzilla is a vessel for meaning, for trauma, for things that we would otherwise not be able to or not want to face. It gives us sort of a means, a story around which to process those things. And this is true of any monster, whether it be fictional monsters that we see in popular culture or in literature or in folklore and myth. And this is true across cultures. But it's also true in the monsters that maybe we aren't even conscious that we have monsterized. The other, the immigrant, the gender or sexual other, the racial other, the ways that we demonize, another way of saying it, or monsterize those who are different from us. And then, crucially as well, that which is in ourselves that we repress or don't want to face. The monster perhaps within us that we try to hold beneath the surface, all of that is caught up in this idea that the monster's body, our body, is a cultural body, inseparable from the narratives and the meaning that we make both individually and collectively. And then the seventh thesis, that the monster stands at the threshold of becoming. What does that mean? All this means is that it's that apocalyptic notion that I mentioned a moment ago. It's this idea that when we are confronted with the monster, a monster, any monster, it is bringing about a certain, it is bringing to an end an old way of being, which is why we're using the term becoming instead. So this old way of being is sort of put to death, literally or metaphorically, and a new way of being, a new way of living in the world, individually and collectively, is becoming. It's coming into being. And that's how monsters work, all right? Congratulations. You are now experts on monster theory. Probably not what you thought was going to happen when you came to church this morning. But since we are in a church, let's spiritualize it. Let's do the classic youth pastor thing, and it's called the Jesus juke, where you kind of come in and, you think we're going one way, and then it's like, you've probably seen memes about it, like something happens in pop culture. It usually probably involves Taylor Swift, and then someone might put on social media like youth pastor voice, you've heard of blah blah blah. Well, there was this guy in Scripture, and then we introduced Jesus. If you've never been a youth pastor before, maybe that didn't make sense, but it was viscerally real to me as I described it. Okay, so how does this all tie together? Well, I was thinking about instances outside of Godzilla, of course, where the lines between hero and villain, good, bad, right, wrong, are blurred. And the reality is, here's the reality. They're always blurred. They are always blurred. If we're able to see like a clearly delineated in-group or out-group, right group or wrong group, it's because we are disavowing something. We are repressing something. We are hiding something. We are choosing not to look at something that allows us to divide the world cleanly into the good guys and the bad guys. And the gift of monsters is the ways that they sort of break through those barriers that we set up, and they undermine our attempts to keep the world so clearly delineated, okay? And so I was thinking about maybe the most vivid example of this, at least for our context, would actually be the monster that is Christianity, all right? And so I've been in this, what I'll call the broader progressive Christian space for almost a decade now. Previously, I'd worked at pretty run-of-the-mill evangelical megachurches, was released from that work, to put it charitably, when my convictions, not only theologically around certain kind of core evangelical doctrines, salvation, sin, heaven, hell, things like that, but also my social, political postures around inclusivity, particularly around racial injustice and the inclusion of the LGBTQ community. When those became untenable, unreconcilable in the context I was in anymore, I was released. And then ended up here, and et cetera, et cetera. You don't need that whole history right now, but within this space, and I don't want to oversimplify, because there's a diversity in this room that I can't capture in kind of the way I'm going to explain it, but within this progressive Christian space, there are often, not always, but often, sort of two dominant or predominant camps that emerge. And I'm going to loosely label them your ex-evangelicals and your post-evangelicals. Completely arbitrary terminology, but go with me, okay? And I've noticed that folks who cling or resonate with the ex-evangelical, which is short for ex-evangelical label, for reasons that are completely understandable and entirely defensible, it is meaningful or helpful to anathemize, to demonize, to monsterize the faith that they are leaving. Christianity, almost by necessity, becomes pure villain. It becomes something that abused them, and it may really have done so. It becomes something that lied to them, that deceived them, and again, it may really have done so, but irredeemably so. And its legacy throughout history is only death, only destruction, only discrimination, dehumanization, pick whatever other negative effect you can think of. And then for your post-evangelical, oftentimes there's an element of privilege to this. So let's name that up front. But maybe the experience wasn't quite as traumatic, or maybe they're of a different Enneagram number, maybe they're wired differently, who knows? But for whatever reason, folks who are more drawn to this camp, they want to take a let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater approach. And so they're trying to sort of maybe cut away those elements. And this isn't just an evangelical thing. There's versions of this in other facets of Christianity, but for our purposes, evangelicalism. Maybe there's, let's become more inclusive. Certainly, let's become maybe less top-down, less hierarchical, less patriarchal. But there's these other things that we want to retain and reclaim, and that's good. And cards on the table, I'm a little bit more here, but there's some other temptations here that can be risky. One of which is, in order to sort of maintain sort of a heroic purity around what must be true Christianity, oftentimes there's a need to then demonize or monsterize those who identify as Christians who don't fit within our kind of our new, pure, good version of Christianity category. And to be clear, maybe some of those folks who are being monsterized or demonized are doing things that are not good. I don't want to sit here and say, well, yeah, those evangelicals over there who are not only not inclusive of LGBTQ folks, but are downright cruel towards them, like, I can totally see where, no, that's not what we're saying here, but almost as a need to maintain some sort of notion of Christian purity, we have to just completely write off those folks who don't fit into our boxes. So you see these are two different approaches to maintaining a very kind of clear-cut, in-out, right-wrong version of Christianity. Either to maintain its heroism, we must cut off those who don't fit, which is actually pretty similar to what regular evangelicals do. Or, in order to maintain some sense of like internal completeness or wholeness or purity, we have to just burn the entire, like there's nothing redeemable about this. And here's the reality. It's just not that simple. It's just not that simple. And I actually think Paul in Romans, really all of Paul's letters, but Romans, of course, being his supposed magnum opus, his most famous one. I'll get as to why that's probably a farce in a second. But I think Paul gives us some categories for this. In order to illustrate this, I'm going to use a passage that has probably been, I guarantee you've heard it, by the way. Like even if you didn't know what the little numbers next to it were, you have heard this verse that I'm about to read. But there it is. But you might have a little bit of a cringy response to this. All right, Romans 3:23, part of the good old Romans road. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And for many of you, the context of this passage was quite likely to let you know that at the core of your being, at the most fundamental level, you are wretched. And God, despite being some sort of infinite and all-powerful whatever God is, because of your inherent wretchedness, God doesn't want to be in the same room as you. So in order to solve this problem, well, God's hands were tied. God had to murder his son. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense when you really say it out loud and kind of unpack it. But spoiler alert, that's not at all what Paul was talking about. Because what you have to understand is Romans was not Paul writing systematic theology to be taught at Phoenix Seminary 2,000 years later. Paul was writing a letter to a church that was wrestling with people not fitting cleanly in boxes. You see, there was a diversity of Paul's congregations, the congregations that he had started. There was Jewish folks, and there was folks who were not ethnically Jewish, and the folks who were not ethnically Jewish had different customs, different practices, and without going into too much detail, they looked a little bit different, at least the men did, under their garments. And Paul was trying to make sense of these people being together, being unified as one, without allowing one to absorb and appropriate the other. How do they maintain the distinctness of their diversity, their cultures, their practices, their beliefs, everything, and yet be unified around this hope that Paul had in Christ? And so this, within the broader context of the genuinely there are literally times in Romans, more so than any other of Paul's letters, where it literally seems like he's doing you know what, let me just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Like, there is a beautiful haphazardness to the way that Paul is meandering through his arguments in the book of Romans. And I mean this in the best way, even if it doesn't sound like that. But what Paul is doing when he's talking about sin is he keeps, he'll bring up an argument that one side is probably, as they're hearing it, they're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden he's like, gotcha. You thought I was setting you up to win this cultural battle, but no, you are just as culpable. You are just as guilty of this. And so Paul's conversations about the universality of sin are not Paul with some sort of like divine insight, for all time and places, saying that like all of us just suck and we should just not have any sense of self-worth. No. It's not all he's doing. He is evening the playing field. The universality of sin through the lens of Paul is good news. Because it's not about what we are inherently at the core of our being. Rather, it's about the latent possibility within all of us, at all times, to be both hero and villain. Sometimes simultaneously. We are made in the image of God. Paul believed that. As such, we are a reflection of God's divine, infinite being. We don't fit cleanly into either or categories. We don't fit cleanly into finite boxes where our identity is exhausted by one or maybe two particular labels. And at any given time, and this is the beauty of notions of things like redemption and reclamation and things like that, at any given time, what has been our story can simply be a chapter, and something new can begin to be written. This is the logic of resurrection, but resurrection is not the walking back of something that was, but rather going through and coming out the other side as something new. And so the beauty of Paul's language around sin in the book of Romans is, one, it grounds us in a kind of humanizing humility. And that's the beautiful thing. So often this verse has been dehumanizing. It's been used to make folks feel less than human, less than worthy, less than fill in the blank. In Paul's intent, I would strongly argue, this was meant to be humanizing. It's meant to give us the very means of seeing the humanity in one another. Because all of us together, despite our experiences, despite the circumstances of our birth, despite our ethnicity, our culture, our practices, our gender identity, despite any of these things, there is in us a latent possibility to humanize or dehumanize, to do good or do evil. And that humility should allow us, should free us, should empower us, should perhaps even demand of us that we see the humanity in one another, in the other. All right? You see, from the beginning, from the very beginning of the New Testament, there was not this one singular thing called Christianity. In fact, when the New Testament was actually written, for the most part, none of the people who we would now retrospectively refer to as Christians saw themselves that way. Most of them saw themselves as some piece of Judaism, which was itself not one monolithic thing, but was a diversity of belief and practice. And Christianity emerged out of that. And And within the New Testament itself, you already see them wrestling with this diversity. Much of the New Testament, written by Paul, is him often arguing with other folks who are also followers of Jesus and trying to make sense of, okay, like, how do we be together? What is the implication of this for the world? And from the very beginning, there was a plurality of Christianities. And that remained true despite the best efforts of Emperor Constantine and those who came after him. It remained true that there has only always ever been Christianities. And within the history of those Christianities, in the name of Christ, folks have done some really good things, and folks have done some really bad things. And today, in the name of Christ, folks are doing some really good things, and folks are doing some really bad things. Oh, and by the way, each of us, sometimes in the name of Christ, sometimes not, all of us are capable of doing some really good things, and sometimes of doing some really bad things. Shameless plug real quick. On Wednesday, one of our book clubs is going to start. I have a slide for it. This is going to be led by John and Teresa Rausch, a book called After Evangelicalism, written by David Gushee, who's an ethicist, who's written a lot around sort of the intersection of like faith and inclusivity, especially around questions of like sexuality and things like that. This book is exploring one possible Christianity. It's going to look at some of the Christianities that many of us maybe have experienced in the past and which don't work anymore, if they ever did, and sort of playfully explore what are some other ways in which this Christian label might be meaningful. So if that interests you at all, sign up for it. Sign-ups are still open. It's going to be Wednesday nights, just down the hall in here in the evening. But even beyond that, if there's been a theme for Watershed in this calendar year, it's been how massively difficult it is to talk to all of you. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I love this about this room. Because not only have there historically been a plurality, a diversity of Christianities, in this room there is a plurality, a diversity of Christianities, of spiritualities, of trajectories, as in like the direction you all want to go with your relationship with Jesus or your not relationship with Jesus or your relationship with God or the divine or whatever label you want to use, and all of it belongs. And our job on some level is to meet all of you where you're at and make this sort of work together in some messy, beautiful way. In a really weird way, we literally have the same job. And I'm not just saying we as in like the pastors. We, all of us together, are trying to accomplish the same task that Paul was trying to accomplish 2,000 years ago within his congregations. How does it work that we can live together, that we can love together, awaken, struggle together, as if a different world is possible today? How do we do that without any one of us or any faction among us sort of rising up and imposing our version of that on everyone else? That's what we're doing, at least a little bit. And it's tough. It's beautiful. I find it energizing. Not sure if all of my colleagues feel the same way, but I love it. But it's tough, all right? And where this ties back to monster theory is simply in naming the fact that the work that we're doing, the work I just named, in a way it's slaying monsters, but maybe even more accurately, in a way it is learning to accept the monsters in our midst, accept the monsters within us, and accept the ways in which identifying with, or as even, these monsters that we see are opening us up, freeing us to be something new, something wonderful, something beautiful together. So what I want to leave you with, I was talking about this with Matt O'Neill, our lead pastor, this morning. There's a prayer. And we've said it from stage. This will be familiar to some of you, but we're just realizing how many new folks are in this room within this calendar year. I almost hesitated in sharing this, but I was like, there's going to be a lot of folks who haven't heard us talk about this from stage. So there was this priest, this Latin American priest, Oscar Romero. He lived in Latin America. And his work was very much within the tradition of liberation theology. And Oscar Romero was doing work in some of the most impoverished countries, some of the most exploited countries, exploited, by the way, by the United States, the most Christian nation in history. Because remember, there is a plurality of Christianities. And so in many ways, this was Christian on Christian violence. A Christian nation coming in and exploiting the resources, the natural resources of other ostensibly Christian nations. And Oscar Romero was at the center of this, and he was a priest, but he was organizing folks who were marginalized and oppressed. And you can look all this up; it's in the public domain. But the short version of it, he was executed, he was assassinated, and it was a joint effort between folks in his country who were against him and the American CIA. So the CIA assassinated Oscar Romero. And huge loss, martyr, everything. But in many ways, as this often happens, he's been sort of immortalized, posthumously. Just his legacy is incredible. And so this prayer that's on the screen that I'm going to read through, sort of as a kind of closing, as a benediction to you, it was written in his honor. So he didn't write this, but it captures the spirit of his work. And I would argue it captures the spirit of the work that I think we are called to collectively do. It's sort of, there's a humanity and a humility to the way that it describes our mission, our calling, what it could mean to be Christian. Because just as there's been a plurality of Christianities throughout history, and just as that plurality of Christianities have done amazing things and terrible things in the name of Christ, there is going forward that same possibility. It is not as if the book is closed on what the legacy of Christianity will be in the next decade, in the next century, in the next millennium, God willing, if we last that long. It's possibility. It's all possibility. And I think this prayer, which I'll read right now, captures that really beautifully. So it helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there's a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, But that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. Ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. Amen.
Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Sing it again, say, your goodness is running after me. Yeah, your goodness is running after me. my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything, everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
Thank you guys for being here this morning. A couple of quick things. First of all, myself and David are going to be in the back there. If you're brand new, I'd love to shake your hand and meet you. I know he would as well. And then also, I need your help for like 3 minutes. And this is going to sound a little bit odd, but once a month, we have someone that comes in and sweeps and mops this lovely auditorium. But what we do to help them is we stack the chairs and get those out of the way. So you actually get a chance to participate this morning. Wait, don't start yet. Some of you are eager beavers out there. So there's these magnetic things on the backs of the chairs. So if somebody in your row could just pull those off and create a stack, and David, who's shooting up a hand back there, will take those from whoever stacks those up. Oh, look at this. We're just going to do this now. That's good. All right, let's do that. Let's get that knocked out. And then if you could stack the chairs this direction so we don't have to drag them across the floor, and just create a stack for each row if possible, and just kind of push those gently next to the curtains. And is that enough detail? You think you guys can handle that? Thanks, Matt, for micromanaging us all. Thanks for being here this morning. Have a great morning.